We got about 19 minutes or so of new information on Ghost of Yotei, and I'm definitely very excited about this. So we got a little bit more on Atsu's backstory. We find out that her family was killed, which we already knew. They were killed by the Yotei Six, and she wishes for revenge against that. However, it does say, what we found out now is that she went away for 16 years, did whatever she did wherever, and I guess that's where she learned fighting or whatever. And then now she has returned. So we did get that whole she's been gone and now she's come back for revenge kind of thing. And they also made an interesting point because they pointed out that she is the ghost, similar to Jin, but she's actually a very different kind of ghost than Jin was. So Jin was a protector spirit in a way. He was the protector of Tsushima, or the will of Tsushima itself in a way. And what he was doing is he was protecting its people from the Mongolians. And so because of that, people saw him with a sort of reverence. He was a good kind of thing. But Atsu is a completely different ghost. She's an Onryo, which is a spirit of vengeance. And because of that, she's not so much a protector spirit. She's not necessarily a good thing. It's this, in a sense, like what Godzilla becomes in a lot of the later movies, where early on, he's antagonistic, he's destructive, but later on, he's a territorial animal, where it's, okay, yeah, he's defending Japan or he's defending Earth, but he's also destroying it in the process, and he really doesn't care. This is just his territory, and he's taking other creatures out that are trying to infringe on his territory. And Atsu's like that, where she is so concerned with vengeance that she's maybe not so concerned with the well-being of people in the area. And so she's seen as this don't get in her way, almost like an urban legend or something that you tell your children, don't stay out late at night, the Onryo will get you, that sort of thing. But yeah, so she's a very different kind of ghost. She's not malevolent. She's not malevolent either, but she's very different. And as such, they say she is not, like Jin is a samurai at heart. Yeah, that's what he grew up as. He's concerned with honor. He's concerned with that sort of thing. And his journey is about coming to grips with that might not be the best way to solve this problem. Like sometimes you have to sacrifice a bit of yourself for the greater good. If he goes at this the way a samurai would, he's gonna die with honor, but he's going to die, and a dead Jin is not very helpful to the people of Tsushima. So he has to give up a part of himself to become this ghost and maybe do things in a dishonorable way, but is for the greater good. Atsu is different. She's a mercenary. She is not concerned with honor, and she's not a ninja. She's not concerned with being sneaky. She's concerned with being very out there and striking fear into her enemies. She wants to be seen, but she also doesn't care about honor at all. She's the kind of person that's going to throw pocket sand in your eye. And we can see that in some of the gameplay where she kills a guy and he drops his spear, and then she picks up his spear off the ground and then just throws it at another person. If you're used to reading like some of the old manga, was it Lone Wolf and Cub, I think it was, where he would sometimes throw the katana, and that was a way that he would win, was because as a samurai, you're never supposed to unhand your weapon. You're supposed to have it in your hands at all times. So by throwing it, it would just catch the enemy off guard, because it's, oh my God, nobody would ever do that. What kind of dishonorable person is this? But that gave him the edge. And she's very much that, where she's going to take every advantage that she can to reach her goals. So she's a very different kind of ghost. And because of that, the combat in this is going to be a lot more visceral, which is, we're going to get into one of the modes that's going to demonstrate that a little bit better a little bit later. So there are some changes from Ghost of Tsushima. So first of all, weapons. Obviously, she has a much larger variety of weapons. We've been over them before. She's got the katana, the dual swords, the kusurigama, the yari, the spear, and the odachi, which is the great sword. And so she has these 5 weapons, and those are replacing stances. So we can see in the video, there's a part where she comes in and she's fighting these guys and she switches. And you can see in the lower right-hand corner where with Jin, it would have your 4 stances where you can switch between them. Here, the wheel shows different weapons. So there's not going to be different stances for each weapon. Each weapon itself is the equivalent of what one of the stances were. But there were 4 in Ghost of Tsushima, and there are 5 now. So you do have a lot of variety, and each weapon is going to have its own upgrades and that sort of thing. And certain weapons, this carrying over from the stances. Stances had certain advantages, like you had a certain stance that was better against sword and shield. You had a certain stance that was better against dual wielders. This is very similar. So here, certain weapons are going to have advantages against certain enemies, such as the dual sword. They explicitly say has an advantage over the spear. and the 𝙎𝙪𝙥𝙦 has an advantage over bigger enemies. It seems that a spear has an advantage over your standard sword enemies because you have a longer reach, or maybe when you're in a group because, you can keep people further away from you. So each weapon is going to have its own case use, and you're going to be swapping between them on the fly to help you solve whatever situation you're currently in. So they are replacing stances with different weapons, which I actually think is really cool. I did like the idea of stances. In a perfect world, I think we'd have stances and different weapons. That is what certain games like Neo does, but I still think this is going to work pretty well. It also says that you can disarm enemies now. So if you time it, you can actually knock the weapons out of their hand. And then, as I said, you can pick those weapons up and use them against them. However, you can also be disarmed. So if you're not careful, you might lose your katana, and then you might have to switch to something else because you don't have your weapon anymore, or go running over and grabbing it. So that's going to make the combat a little more dynamic by adding that. And of course, enemies too, when you disarm them, they have backup weapons, and that's one thing that it looks like they might be doing is switching things up. So if you're up against a guy with a spear and you pull out the dual swords, you might fight him for a while. You have the advantage because you have the dual swords, but then he might put away the spear and switch to a different weapon. And then that means that every time you face a person, you're going to have to adjust your strategy on the fly. You can't just look and say, okay, I'm just going to equip this and have an advantage. You're going to have to be paying attention in battle. So that's pretty cool. Another thing that they added this time is cards. In Ghost of Tsushima, you have your map and you have your points of interest on the map. They're doing that a little bit differently here. So this time what's going to happen is when you defeat an enemy, you might have the opportunity to interrogate them. And when you do that, they're going to give you a choice of 3 cards. So basically you can ask them one of 3 questions. And depending on which question you ask them, you're going to get a card. And that card is going to open up a part of the map or show you where a certain objective may be. Like if you ask them a certain question, like the Oni question, then in the video, it shows that is going to reveal the location of how you unlock the 𝙎𝙪𝙥𝙦, how you unlock the spear. However, the same guy, you could ask about the kitsune, and that is going to unlock the Kusarigama. So you could just run around and discover things, but you can also interrogate your enemies and then get information that way, and then ask them about what you're interested in. So in a way, you can, in Ghost of Tsushima, you're just running around, oh, I found a tree here, oh, I found a shrine over there. Whatever you find is what you get. But here, because they want the story to be more focused around you, if you're more concerned with unlocking new abilities, when you interrogate people, you can ask them about where can I find new abilities. If you're more concerned with new towns, you could ask them a certain question and it'll find new towns. So depending on how you interrogate your enemies, you can actually direct yourself towards the objectives that you prioritize, which is interesting. It's an interesting way of doing it. And also on top of that, they have a map system, which in the old game, you buy a map, it shows up on your map where the location of it is. Here you actually get an actual piece of paper, and the piece of paper will have some landmarks on it, and then it'll have the icon on it, and you actually have to line that up with your world map. So when you buy a map, it doesn't automatically tell you where something is. It actually gives you a map, and you have to line it up with the real map and say, oh, okay, this is located at the fork of 2 rivers. Let's look at all the rivers. Let's find where there's a fork that looks like this. Ah, there it is. And then you can place it on your map. So I think that's pretty cool as well. They also have a bounty system now. So as you defeat more enemies, your bounty is going to go up. This is an interesting way to do level scaling, because obviously in a lot of games, what they'll do is they'll just say, you level up, your enemies level up too. Well, here what they're going to do is they're going to say, okay, as you get stronger, your bounty goes up, which means you're going to be attracting stronger enemies, because people are like, the big guys are like, you're not worth my time. But then as you go through, it's, oh, this person is actually worth something to me, so now I'm going to go. That's an interesting way to do difficulty. And of course, you can collect bounties on them as well. We also have the new information on camp. So at the camp, you can go there, you can eat like you can in any game, but this is actually a way that you don't have to run out. If you want a certain NPC, you don't have to go running out to them across the map. You can actually have them come to you at camp. That's going to make things a little bit easier. And finally, we're getting 3 alternate modes. So the first mode is Kurosawa mode, which comes from the original game. It basically makes the game in black and white. It adds more film grain, and it adds wind, so things are billowing all the time. There's Miike mode, which comes from Takashi Miike, or Miike Takashi, who is the director of 13 Assassins. This is going to move the camera closer into you, and it's going to add more blood and more mud, and it's going to make everything look grittier and dirtier. So that's where that more visceral thing comes out. And then finally, they have Watanabe mode, which comes from Shiro Watanabe, who's the director of Macross Plus, Cowboy Bebop, and Samurai Champloo. So you can get the idea. They're going to have lo-fi beats playing. He doesn't write the music. Somebody else wrote the music in Samurai Champloo, but he's going to be curating the music. Unfortunately, the guy who wrote the music for Samurai Champloo passed away, but Shiro Watanabe is going to be curating it. He picked the songs that are going to be in it. Watching it, I don't think I'll be playing that mode, but it's cool that they added it. It's an interesting little twist. Ghost of Yotei coming out this October, so I'm definitely way more excited than I was before, which I was already pretty excited. Yeah, check it out.